A chemical spill contaminating the water supply in 9 West Virginia counties.
This year alone, over 300,000 people in West Virginia had their drinking water contaminated.
What are the health effects of having these drugs in our drinking water?
It's forced medical treatment without the consent of residents.
My friends, water filtration is one of the most basic actions you can take to protect you and your family from the harmful toxins and heavy metals in your tap water.
On average, the county says it sprays with the glyphosate at least once a week.
Few filters cut out the glyphosates that is found in water supplies worldwide. Remove pesticides, herbicides, chloramines, hydrofluorosilicic acid, sodium hexafluorosilicate.
Fluoride, it is in tea, it's in coffee, it's in water, it's in bread, it's in toothpaste.
It is our responsibility to protect our families. The establishment's not going to do it. It's time to take action. It's time to filter our water. Visit InfoWarsStore.com and use promo code WATER to get 10% off their entire family of incredible products. Or call toll-free 888-253-3139. Hi folks, Alex Jones here with some important information. I want to tell you about Matt Redhawk and his team of patriots over at My Patriot Supply. Several years ago, Matt was sitting in his 2-bedroom apartment, frustrated with the direction this country was headed and the charlatans willing to sell us out for a quick buck. Deciding to take action, a company run by patriots for patriots was born. My Patriot Supply has never taken a loan or accepted outside funding. They now operate 2 distribution facilities and employ over 50 hardworking American men and women. It is rare to find companies who practice what they preach. And that's why I stock my pantry with high-quality storable foods from My Patriot Supply. Go to mypatriotsupply.com/Alex today for special offers on emergency food storage, or call their preparedness specialist at 866-229-0927. That's 866-229-0927. Do business with someone who shares your values. mypatriotsupply.com/Alex. In the near future.
When you realize how fake it all is, the football, the basketball.
Alert. Security alert. This is Homeland Security. Analysis. InfoWars building independent media operation.
You let the worst people get control and tell us that we are the ones responsible.
Prime Directive. Discredit Alex Jones.
Jones is the wildly popular conspiracy theorist.
A popular conspiracy theory talk show called InfoWars.
Alex Jones is now in an Austin jail.
These people are assaulting us.
Targeting of patriots engaged.
They are never going to stop. They're never going to deviate from their program until we stop them.
Block free iPhone app at Infowars.com. Block free podcast and video feed. Imperative. Destroy Prison Planet TV.
You gotta set your eye on the enemy, not worry about what propaganda they put out. Intellectually, it's begun. You can feel it.
From the Infowars.com studios, it's Alex Jones.
John DiBartolo is our guest at MiddleEarthNetwork.com. One of the most successful literary fiction franchises of all time. It's up in the top 3 or 4 on record. One of the biggest movie franchises of all time. The Lord of the Rings, The Hobbits, The World of Middle-earth. And when you study politics and the power behind the throne, the all-seeing eye of the Illuminati, clear archetypes. So it was probably 15 years ago, I started reading some of the books that had fragments of the Tolkien interviews and things where he did liken it to World War I, World War II, different powers, the way political systems work, tyranny versus liberty. And you could clearly see that he knew a lot as a top linguist and more. But our guest has done a lot of studying, helped ferret out folks that had, this rare interview that's going to be doled out, I guess, over the next few months. We're going to air a first little clip here today. But John, break it down again, how you ran into this, where, and from your deep research, where J.R.R. Tolkien, stands from his political view way back when this was recorded in what year, in 1950?
It was recorded. The public recording was made in 1958 at what was called a Hobbit's dinner. This was the first time. What's amazing about this tape, too, it's so many firsts. This is the first time that Tolkien went out of the country for a quote-unquote fan dinner. like this. So it's a first in many ways, and it's a complete recording from beginning to end. So out on the internet, you'll find like fragmentary recordings of Tolkien and interviews, but never have we heard him before in a natural setting where he's able to deliver a speech from beginning to end. So that's what really makes this tape unique. But my friend Renee van Rossenberg from Holland, and this all happened really through the Tolkien Society, the British Tolkien Society. We're all friends together. And Renee van Rossenberg was doing research for a white paper he was going to deliver at a celebration at the Tolkien Society. He knew about this speech that Tolkien had delivered at this Hobbits dinner in 1958 in Rotterdam. So he went to Rotterdam to research the speech. And in his research, interviewing people that were still surviving, that were at the dinner, he came across the family of the man who actually, this was a hobbyist, a tape hobbyist. Remember, this is 1958. Reel-to-reel is fairly new. So this guy would record all the speeches at these events. And the family said, oh, we've got this tape. You can have it. So as a Tolkien fan, Renee was literally beside himself. He didn't know what was going to be on the tape. Brings the tape back, plays it, and nearly falls on the floor because you've got this entire speech from J.R.R. Tolkien. And in the speech, like I said before, we're hearing Tolkien like we've never heard him before. He's emotional, he's jovial, he's joking, but at the same time, he's very serious. He's talking about the direct meaning of the Lord of the Rings in a way that we've never heard him say before, even in his letters, in such a definitive way. And there's just priceless quotes. Well, I would call myself a novice Tolkien fan, not like somebody who's really had the time to get into it deeply, but I've resonated with it. You obviously have done a lot of research into this, heading up one of the big societies out there that's been very successful at digging on a lot of lore. Tell us a little bit about this really interesting man, because the more I've read about him, he was really an interesting person. Well, like you said earlier in the introduction, he fought in the trench warfare of World War I. Most of his friends, his school friends, his college friends, I think only one of his friends made it through World War I, and he himself was sick in the war, but he survived through. And obviously, the trench warfare had an immense and great effect on Tolkien himself. Now, he wasn't writing direct allegory, and you'll hear many scholars say this, and Tolkien himself said it very many times, that he was not a great fan of direct allegory. He would like the themes to be taken up in the story himself. Someone like his friend C.S. Lewis was very interested in direct allegory. This was an indirect allegory. It's not like the Screw Tape letters that's direct. Right. He would call it applicability. He would say what he was writing, you could make it very applicable. Specifically, the ring. The ring would be a symbol for power. And if you read through his letters, and I would highly recommend anybody who's interested in not only the Lord of the Rings and the fantasy stuff, but just Tolkien as a man and a lot of maybe his politics and his beliefs, to read his letters, because most of his letters have been published in full. And I brought a bunch of quotes from him today. One of my favorite quotes from him, and I think this will really appeal to you and your fan base, is his summation of evil in the world, okay? And this is back in 1969. He talks about what he calls the Hydra's heads, and I'll read the quote verbatim from him. He says, "The spirit of wickedness in high places is now so powerful and so many-headed in its incarnations, there seems nothing more to do personally than to refuse to worship any of the Hydra's heads. The world, he thought, seemed little better than a new Tower of Babel, all noise and confusion." So even back in 1969, and way before that, in the 30s and the 40s, he was writing about the level of corruption that had reached what he would call, quote unquote, the central planners. And he just described the New World Order so eloquently. Right. Right, exactly. And I think I've heard you say before, these people who he would call whiskered men with bombs, they're playing multi-level chess, right? And the public is barely playing checkers. Yeah. Right. The level of corruption at many levels is that many-headed Hydra. Listen, I've had billionaires and globalists literally up in the top of big buildings, just like Gandalf going in to talk to Saruman, literally say you must join with the New World Order.
I mean, and that's why I went and saw the movie. I'm like, I remember reading that book 20 years ago, and it's like, that's really how they act. I've been given that speech. And so I guess Tolkien, as a high-level professor and others, he'd run into that, surely. I mean, they're literally selling you on how evil's the way to go. And so, you know, he says it's not direct allegory, and I'm not comparing myself to Gandalf. I'm just saying that's the speech they give you, is that, you know, I am Saruman of many colors. Well, you have to have a balance. Join with Lucifer. Join with the Great Eye. The power of Isengard is now at your command.
Right, exactly. And, you know, I think the disconnect for the average person is the average person, they see a person with a nice suit on, and they cannot ever even fathom that that person might actually be evil. There's a great disconnect in modern society, and that's why Tolkien is so brilliant, but because he shows in a fantasy novel how deep evil can go, and it can affect the smallest person as well as the highest person in the world.
And let me ask you a question. Who came up with the battle armor of Sauron that was in the film that came out over a decade ago, and then in the new one when he walks out of the flame interdimensionally at that fortress when he defeats Gandalf? I know it's described in the book, but not that way. Who came up with that battle armor?
Well, that would probably be one of the set designers or the armor designers. There was a lot of great armor and weapons designers working on the film.
Well, no, it's just that archetypally, in a lot of Illuminati research I did, that's one of the highest level initiations. That's how Lucifer is described when he manifests.
Right. Well, there's definitely a great similarity between the what I would call these Sauronic characters in Tolkien's legendary.
Well, no, I mean, there's a god, and there's these higher angels. Right. Sauron's one of those. He defects, tries to destroy the creation in rebellion. It is a Christian allegory, is it not?
Right. Yeah, well, when you go deeper into the mythology and read the Silmarillion, which the Silmarillion is the back legends, the history, so to speak, that lays behind the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, it's actually Morgoth or Melkor who is the satanic figure behind Sauron. So Sauron is not the ultimate evil figure in the mythology. It's actually Melkor who is controlling things from behind the scenes.
Well, that's right. Doesn't Melkor fall to Earth and gets destroyed, and then out of it, it's kind of a reincarnation of Sauron?
Right, exactly. Melkor is chained behind the door of night, and then the angels, the higher powers, they give him pardon and let him out again. And he wreaks havoc. He's not redeemable. There's no repentance for Morgoth. He's an absolutely true evil character, and that's what's so brilliant about Tolkien. He represents evil in such a pure and well-described way.
And notice, just like the cell phones really track everybody, they give us the technology, but with the back doors in it, they're giving us all the tech, but it's ruled by the One Ring. I mean, he's telling you how the wizards run everything in the allegory.
Exactly, and Tolkien himself was extremely frightened and discouraged, really, at the level that machinery itself was taking over the world.
He predicted little computer gadgets would dehumanize us. Talk about that.
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, another great quote from his letters, and again, I would highly recommend people, everyone, you, Alex Jones, go and read Tolkien's letters. It's an absolute lesson in this whole area. There's a quote where he talks about the war of the machines that has already begun. It made me think of Terminator when I read this quote, the war of the machines, and he says, well, the first war of the machines seems to be drawing to its final inconclusive chapter. Speaking about World War II, leaving, alas, everyone the poorer, many bereaved or maimed, millions dead, and only one thing triumphant: the machines. As the servants of the machine are becoming a privileged class, the machines are going to be enormously more powerful. What's their next move? So, I mean, he's personifying the machine.
Tolkien was a total visionary.
Total visionary. And that's part of my mission, and the Middle Earth Network's mission is to make people see that it just wasn't about the story of the Lord of the Rings. Now, a lot of this is tied up in the story of the Lord of the Rings, but this was a brilliant man. And the Middle Earth Network is also one of the co-founders of the Mythgard Institute, which is the very first online college allowing a master's degree in what we call Tolkien studies, studying all the peripheral stuff that Tolkien himself loved and studied, and enriching people.
Wow. Well, you're a great interview. I want to have you back for a full hour soon. This is amazing.
Absolutely.
I'm glad you contacted us. I want to play